Hey there, it's Amy, and I wanted to pop on and share with you this recent creation that I made. This is actually for a friend of mine, and it is a faith-based, kind of botanical themed junk journal that is vintage and grunge mixed in, and I tried to incorporate things that I know that she likes, and so I'll try to point those out while going through. It is 2 signatures, and I made it with a embossed wallpaper cover that I stitched around, and here you can see the embossed wallpaper. And then on the spine, I did add a piece of fabric. It's like a blue ticking stripe fabric, and then added this lace trim, which you'll see throughout it. It is vintage. This is a strip of book text, and then some more of the embossed wallpaper on top that I stitched down. And the reason why I do my spines like this a lot of time is, one, I do like to reinforce my spines, and so I add the fabric. And then I like this just because when it sits on the shelf, I just love looking at them and seeing this. I feel like this is what I see more so than this, than the cover, if you will. And so a lot of times I will put titles going down the spine on mine, or add dates or so forth. But I left it blank for her because, again, this isn't my journal, this is hers. So without further ado, let's see if we can get into it. I did add corner protectors, these metal corner protectors on the edges. Make sure I'm in frame. Sorry, it's kind of a big one. So, yeah. I used lots of vintage items. There are some newer items. I'll try to point them out as I can. And if you have any questions, you can always leave a comment and I'll try to answer. So for the cover, I started with just basically this book text. It's from a garden book. This is some fabric. I think this is a Kathy Holden or Tim Holtz. I can't remember. This is some lace trim. This is an old book page too from, I think it's a kid's arithmetic book. I did some stamping on this like neutral, or this white. It was kind of like a botanical paper, and I stamped this map in the background. This is a piece of vintage, a check over here. This is a printable floral. I think this is from Ink and Pages. This is some Tim Holtz paper. Sheet music. This is a vintage cigar band. And then this is some canvas. And then this is a piece of vintage lace trim. And then this, again, these two are from Hobby Lobby. These are the like vinyl or acetate pieces, and the cross. And then this is a cardstock, if you will, ephemera. It comes in a kit. I can't remember how many pieces are in it, but it says all things are possible with God. And then I added this library book-like label, if you will, on top. So yeah, let's get into it. So I like to add pockets when I make my journals because I enjoy storing things inside my journals. And so I made 2 on this one, and they're nice and deep. And so this is a standard postcard, but you can see how deep that one is. And this is like a denim upholstery fabric. And then this is some vintage lace or some eyelet fabric. So yeah, so there's 2 pockets, and then there's that. Same ticking stripe that I used on the cover spine, I used on the inside. And then the first signature I did, this is a Tim Holtz piece of paper. I think it's from the French industrial pack. And then I added made a little acetate window. This is some Timmy Holtz ephemera and some lace, and just made this little card that she can pull out and she can write on it as she wants. Oops. And it's also a tuck spot if you want to tuck something behind there. So this is a little large, but you could tuck something in there if you wanted to. And then the second page, there's some more of that eyelet trim. And I've tucked in here just a vintage little violet note card. And then there's another piece of lace. And then I tucked in this little calendar piece of ephemera, and this says, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Oops, this came out. This actually, I had this tucked in here, this little piece of ephemera. It says, God is always with you. It must have fallen out. I didn't see it. So I had just tucked this in here because, again, I just feel like she can use it as she wants. And then this is a dictionary page, and then I tucked in here just a piece of ephemera, a die cut, or no, excuse me, a printable journal card, and then I add this Timmy Holtz flower in the middle, and I add this little piece of muslin tab at the top with that. And then I used a rusty paper clip and added this little specimen piece of ephemera. And on the back side, just some journaling cards, some vintage garden book pages. And this is a ledger sheet. This is some watercolor paper, and I made this little cluster here just with some canvas, some lace, vintage lace, book text page, and then a button, and this little piece of ephemera that says figure 1 and figure 2. And then over here, I made this envelope, and then I just have tucked in a piece of, this is Timmy Holtz paper, and you can use that as a journaling card, write on it, add a picture, and this is a Tim Holtz ticket. You can write on or add a picture, whatever you want. And then that tucks under the number 4 here. And I add this little cluster, and then I used a piece of Velcro dot, and then this does form like a little spot where you can do some hidden journaling and write on here. And then this is some vintage mat page, and I added this lace trim to the edge. This is some letterhead from Catholic Order of Foresters that is vintage sheet music, and I added this little tab over here and added a little butterfly and some beads, some little blue and crystal clear beads. This is a vintage window envelope. I added a cluster and did a little stamping. You flip it out. This is the card that's on the inside. I stitched around it. It's got some angels. And then I added this file folder to make it a spot where she could journal on the back if she wanted to. And this tag does pull out. And I left that plain for her so she could decorate it as she wants. I tried to do a lot of like little, of course, you know, when you're on camera and you're trying to tuck stuff in, it never works. Okay, we're gonna leave that to the side for now. This is a vintage service station receipt, and I have this little cluster here with this fussy cut cardinal and a blank Denison-like type label and a little Tim Holtz piece of ephemera, and I just tucked a piece of ephemera behind that. And this is vintage like timesheet paper or scheduling paper. Over here I made kind of like a double flip. This is a journaling card. I attached it with some muslin, and then you can flip it and there's a piece of Velcro that attaches here. And then this is some vintage wrapping paper, and I turned it into a pocket, and I added this little journaling card on the inside. And then she can journal on the front, journal on the back. And this pocket is magnetized. I don't know if you can hear that, but yeah. So it's got a label here, vintage bingo marker, some ephemera, a little label, and then a tiny, tiny little tassel here. And then over here, I made a belly band, and then this is a vintage flashcard. I added this little washi like sticker stamp at the top, and then added a tab with a button and another little tiny tag that she can write on. And then the belly band itself, it's a tuck spot. This is Tim Holtz. This is just a printable ticket. And then I made this little journaling card that she can write on. Add a photo, whatever. And this is a piece of textbook like paper ruffle that I stitched on and aged. And then this is kind of like a belly band. And then I was gonna attach this to that, but I thought I'd let her decide if she wanted to. But anyhow, she can pull this out and move it as she wants. And this is on like watercolor paper. And then this is just like a little page waterfall, if you will, that she can use as she wants. So it's got some vintage, it's got tissue paper and sheet music and cardstock. So yeah. Oh, and her birthday's January, so that's why I used that. Here's a little flip out, a piece of ephemera there. And then on the back, I have this tag that I washi taped on and made a little cluster down here. Some blue ledger paper. Over here, I made another tab and attached this little pen nib charm. Some tape. Here's a little fabric ruffle. Then at the top, this is the tag. And then this is from Hobby Lobby, and it says God First. I added a charm and added this little like chiffon brown ribbon to it. And on the back side, this is a vintage label. And I added these little flowers, and they're little centers. One's a snap, one's like a bead cap, one's a pearl bead. Just tucked in some pages, some things for her to journal on. This is the mat page, and then it flips out, and this is a little pocket, like a little, oops. That's for my other friend. I was wondering where those went. And this is just a little pocket, like a little brown envelope pocket. And then I just tucked in some money. And then here's a little cluster. And that flips out, like I said. Over here, this is, I did a page edge of a wallpaper strip. And then I added this little index, vellum index tab. And I just did some collaging on it. It's a little printable postcard. And then this is just a series of tickets, and like this is a game piece I put a brad through, and I did use washi tape and that. So yeah, she can journal on that. And that is a rusty paper clip. And then on the back side, it's a collage tag. And my paper. This is that garden book. I love this little boy. I think that's a sweet little image. This is from Hobby Lobby. This is their part of that acetate, or like that from that pack I was showing you earlier with the cross and the other pieces. And I just tucked in this little like vintage reserve sheet. And then I made this little cluster here, and it says blessed and grateful with just like fabrics and lace trims. Back side is a little pocket. I just stitched a little journaling card for her. She likes bees and butterflies. Over here, another little tag, a tiny little tuck spot with a long tag in it. That's from a piece of cardstock, and I just add that muslin. That flips out. And then that's the end of the first signature. And then the second signature, this is a vintage label. And then I just tucked some papers behind it, like journaling spots, tickets, and so forth. I made this little fabric ruffle and attached this piece of lace and this label here. And then this says, take delight in the Lord. This is from that Hobby Lobby pack I was talking about. I stitched it on, and then I added this little dangle down here with the tag that says 75 and a little key. It says 72 on the back. This is a belly band, and you can move this around, and it's made with that wallpaper that I used on the front. And it's got this long skinny tag in here. And then just made a little cluster down here. And that's on some ledger paper. I used some stamps on the back. This is like a glassine bag. And then I just made this from an index card, just collaged it. And then I added this little tag that she can journal on or use as she wants. And that slides in here. Now, on this back side of this, I went ahead and I did do a little bit of decorating. I mean, I try not to because it's not mine, but sometimes I can't help myself. So this is a piece of vintage ledger paper that's attached in the middle. There's some like that heat transfer tape, so washi bus ticket, a label, and some canvas fabric on top. And then here is a little lace trim on the page edge. And this is another little label with some Tim Holtz ephemera. And then I tucked in this little like avocado dyed watercolor tag with a little Swiss dot tab top. And that is on Vintage Ledger. And then this is an envelope made from sheet or book page. And that's just decorated. And so she can add to it what she wants. And then this is the vellum paper, and then this gets attached with this, which is a paper clip that I had made this little ribbon snippet, if you will, type. Well, I guess it's not a snippet, it's more like a waterfall. But I added this letter is her initial, for her name, and add this little ribbon at the top. And it secures all that here. And I like that she can move stuff around, and this says, worry less, pray more. And that is from that Hobby Lobby set. I made a little cluster back here. Over here, I have a page edge cluster on the edge of the page with some vintage ledger, a big like Denison style label. There's lace, there's book, there's music. And this is just a little tuck-in journaling card. And over here, I did this like page edge with this one, and it's like collaged. And then I did do some modeling paste stencil, so it's textured. You can feel it, but it's like all layered up. And I tucked in this vintage embossed note card. I thought it was really sweet. This little, I don't know if you can see, but it's embossed. And then that is on some coffee, stencil dyed, it's a doily coffee dyed paper. I try to make lots of pockets and tuck in spots because that's what I like. And then on the sheet music page, I made another pocket with this map paper, and I tucked in that and made a little cluster here. And this is just some book pages that vintage book pages she can use. And then this is a canning label that I sewed on the edge here, and it becomes a tuck spot. And at the top here, I made this cluster, and it says, "Hang on and pray." And then this is, I had just folded that, and so over here I figured this would be a nice spot if you want to journal or write something there. And then it's another tuck spot, and I just tucked in some vintage botanical like pages from a book. And then this is a check, a vintage check. It's from 1915. There's the back of that coffee dyed doily paper. And then on that I have this little tab, and I added this cross charm with a little muslin tie at the top. And I added this little tab here with the ticking stripe. And then this is a guest check that I made into a pocket. Did some collaging on it and some stamping, some distressing. And then tucked behind that is just a Quizmo phonetic card. And then back here with some Tim Holtz paper, I made this file folder. Did a little cluster on the front, and then it folds out, and she can journal in there. And then this just is a little paper clip that I made and added a little button to. And then this is a vintage like train card, and it's from Charleston. It's about Charleston. Actually, it's not train. Why did I say that? Well, it is train. It's train and some carriage. It's both. And then over here is just, I dog-eared this page, added this wide eyelet and this fabric piece, and attached another piece of that like acetate key to it, tied it on. And then the very last page, I added this little ruffle, fabric ruffle, and the number 5 and this little button. And so, yeah, and there's the back with my name on it that I made it. And so here's the side if you want to see. Doing it this way so you can see, and there's the top. So, yeah, anyhow, that's the journal that I made for my friend, and I really hope that she likes it. And thanks for watching. Bye.